Jesse Herndon. Oh, I forgot that. Yeah, man, we got. You want to talk about a way too long? Please hold for Dave Sim. Jesse Herndon. I've got his 3-page letter. Is it? Yes, 3-page letter. He sent me a bunch of books, and they came in this week. I actually saw Rolly pulling into the driveway and came out so that I could just get the mail from him. And got the mail, and there was the box, and it's like, who's the box from? So he showed me the box, and it's Jesse Lee Herndon. It's like, man, I have no idea what's in the box. And I looked at the postage, $66. $66 in postage. And Rolly goes, yeah, it's pretty heavy. It's books or something. And that's what it was. It was books. So it's like, not only is Jesse sending me these free, expensive books, he paid $66 for them to get here. This boggles the mind of the dollar tuna guy going $66. What would I spend $66 on personally? I come up empty. I come up empty. So Rolly took the box out back because opening boxes is one of those things that my wrist doesn't do really well. So he opened it up, and there's all my books when I came out back to talk to him about the rest of the stuff. And it's like the one on the top was a book, F. Scott Fitzgerald, I Die for You, and Other Lost Stories. And Jesse writes, I got you the hardcover on this one, which I know now you dislike. And it's like, well, I don't dislike hardcovers. I don't think Cerebus and my work needs to be in hardcover, but as long as it's somebody else's hardcovers, particularly if I didn't pay for it, say, yeah, that's great. Thanks for the hardcover. Because it was as cheap or cheaper than the soft cover for some reason. Dave's smelling remaindered on this. Somebody talked themselves into the fact that F. Scott Fitzgerald is incredibly hot right now, and people are just going to eat this hardcover for breakfast. And by the time the soft cover was coming out, the hardcover wasn't moving. So consequently, that's when you end up getting hardcovers that cost less than the soft cover. Anyway, sorry it took so long to get to you. No, that's fine. Hopefully you find some interest in the stuff that's collected within. Apparently the short tales, quote, thank you for the light, unquote, and, quote, the IOU, unquote, are among the most recently discovered ones in there. Well, again, I don't have time for reading, but I did see the book and I grabbed it right away because there is and I do have to take issue with the publishers. I Die for You and Other Lost Stories. Like, shouldn't lost be in quotation marks? Because if you got this giant hardcover with them in them, they're not lost anymore. You found them. And why don't you call it I Die for You and Other Found Stories by F. Scott Fitzgerald? So I grabbed it because I do remember from my Scott Fitzgerald research that there's a story where the title character is a cartoonist. And it's like, well, okay, as far as I'm concerned, there's got to be some comic art metaphysics in there somewhere that I'd be interested in. I forget what the story was called, and I forget even where I read about it. It might have been in F. Scott Fitzgerald A to Z. It was called, I believe, They'll Never Grow Old, or it was a line of some kind from the song, Might As Well Be Walking on the Sun. Was it even called Walking on the Sun? I don't know, because again, I don't know where I saw it. it is a story that at least theoretically exists. And I thought, okay, I don't remember what the title was, but it might be in here. So I did flip the book open right away and flipped to the list of story titles and went through them as fast as I could and went, no. It might be in here, but no, none of these is They'll Never Grow Old or Walking on the Sun or whatever the line was. I would recognize the title if I saw it, I was pretty sure. So kind of disappointed at that. I might break down and read Gracie at Sea from 1934, which starts on page 57. This was the Scott met George Burns and Gracie Allen somewhere in Baltimore in 1934 when they were on tour, and I guess they said, you should write something for us. And he went, well, I'd love to. And they went, well, write us a screenplay. We're going to Hollywood. We've made a couple of movies already. They're doing really well. And it's like, that sounded like something that Fitzgerald. That sounds really interesting. These are nice folks. I know the whole George Burns and Gracie Allen concept. What's so difficult about writing a movie? It's like, I read the first couple of paragraphs of the introduction. The scenario or screenplay synopsis is a short story in form, thoroughly characterized and thought out. Gracie at Sea tries hard to be the sort of farce that Burns and Allen were already becoming known for. That is to say, with Burns the straight man and Allen the dumb Dora. But Fitzgerald couldn't keep himself from real fiction writing. When George is described in the first paragraph as, quote, a fundamentally lonesome and self-obliterating man, unquote, it's clear this isn't just a cinematic, quote, vehicle which will carry Burns and Allen's stuff, unquote. That's just so Scott Fitzgerald to go, well, okay, I'll write you a screenplay, but I'll write it as if I'm writing a Scott Fitzgerald short story, and then you make it into a movie. So that was definitely Lead Balloon City. I don't know how much of a lead balloon it is, but I think I will be convulsed with laughter if I do get around to reading the 12-page Gracie at Sea. And then he also spent, what Jesse was responding to was me saying after the New Mutants thing that I did with Jeff Seiler, it's like, what do you think Bill and Chris were doing here? Oh, okay. I never read New Mutants, but I'll read it and I'll try and tell you what I think that they were doing here. And I hadn't really picked up on the fact that everybody went, ooh, do that again. and what else would you like to do? And it's like, and I didn't qualify it as if I had the time for this, which I really don't. The Jeff Tyler New Mutants thing was a one-off, just because it had this weird glamour about it. So Jesse sent me like all 3 volumes of Neil Adams' Dead Man, like the latest edition, and theoretically the complete Dead Man, which I never read much past the Strange Adventures serialization. I read the Batman Dead Man crossovers in Brave and Bold, and I've still got pretty much all of those. I don't think I'm missing any of those. So I might do that. It's one of those. Come on, Dave. They're graphic novels, but that's really just a big comic book. I'm sure you could read all of Neil Adams' Dead Man in pretty short order, And if there's something in there where you go, okay, this was why Jesse Lee Herndon was provoked into sending these to me. Again, comic art physics in action. It's probably going to be pretty interesting. But right now, I'm just coming off of 4 days, end of Cerebus and Hell month, finished Hell O'Dolly #1, my side of it, and 4 days left at the end of June. So pedal to the metal, 12 hours a day, not doing anything else besides mocking up pages for Strange Death of Alex Raymond. And it's like, no, I can't be doing these sort of entertaining things. Like, yeah, there's no problem with reading the 12-page Gracie at Sea. But if I combine that with reading, and the other one Jesse sent me was the Flaming Carrot Comics Omnibus, which I also said I'd be interested in reading. If I do Dead Man and Flaming Carrot and Gracie at Sea and the other book that Jesse sent me, then it is adding up. And it's like, I'm 65 years old. Nobody would be surprised if I died next week of COVID-19 or whatever else. And I would really like to get Strange Death of Alex Raymond done. Just in mock-ups, not drawn, not published. Just posterity will judge me very harshly if I never get my Strange Death of Alex Raymond done. And even if I can only do 5 or 6 or 7 pages a month, assuming I've got another 15 or 20 years left, possibly I can get to the point where I do get it done. So, but at the same time, it's also great that Jesse sent these to me because now they are in the Cerebus archive. So, if this is just a Strange Death of Alex Raymond rebellious streak that I'm having, and it's going to wear off in a couple of weeks or 3 weeks or whatever, and I'm going to go, yeah, what the heck, Dave? Just read Dead Man and tell Jesse and everybody else what it is that you're seeing in it at the age of 65 that you probably didn't see in it when you were 12 years old, when you were first reading it. The other book that he sent, which is interesting, is Turn Loose Our Death Rays and Kill Them All, the complete works of Fletcher Hanks. Probably not going to be a page-turner, as it's a collection of what is widely considered some of the most oddball Golden Age comics to be found. It's worth a read as a comics fan, though as it's really unintentionally wacky. And as I said on the Please Hold question a while back, there's a sort of, quote, chasing Fletcher Hanks, quote, unquote, backup story that brings things around full circle in a comic art metaphysics manner that I think you'll appreciate. Same sort of deal. It's one of those, yeah, if Strange Death of Alex Raymond was done, and I'm 75 years old, and I'm really just reading the newspaper and sleeping and stuff now because I got everything done. I very possibly will read it, and I'll go, wow, I really should have read this like 15 years ago when Jesse sent it to me, because this is a really interesting jigsaw puzzle right here. This is why Jesse was sending it to me. But again, even if that doesn't happen, it's very nice to have this variety of material in the Cerebus archive. The other thing that Jesse was talking about is, and here we go, completely made it. I'm currently finishing up work on the most recent Please Hold for Dave Sim transcript. I do that. I go through spurts where I transcribe a bunch, then I wait for Matt to post them. He starts to, then gets busy posting actual new news and such to AMAC and stops entirely. So I get bored and stop transcribing for a few months. Lather, rinse, repeat. I just did April, May, the Diamond Seminar story had me howling, and now June. I now send them straight to Matt, and what I believe is my only reader, Margaret. She asked me recently if I had sent you copies of them, and I said I had. So I don't know if she has done so herself or not. If you ever want me to print the transcriptions and send them to you for the Cerebus archive, I could do so gladly anytime. I might even go a little nutso and go back and transcribe all nearly 400 weekly updates just for posterity. And if I had them all, I only kept digital copies of season 2 onward, I'd transcribe all of Cerebus TV. As Jim Carrey says in The Mask, somebody stop me. And it's like, yes, we have to put a stop to this guy. It's like, there's got to be better uses for your time, but that's not our call to make. That's his call to make.
One of the reasons I haven't really been posting the transcripts is because we kicked around the idea of doing it as a book, and it's on deck of, okay, when I get a little bit of free time, I'm going to take the transcripts, listen to the Please Hold, and, make any corrections necessary, and then, okay, this one's in the can, and build up however big a book it's going to be. Hopefully it's not going to be one of these where, by the 5th one, okay, we're done. The book's done. We don't have any more room. So now it's going to become volume 1 of however many. I'm sure it's going to be at least 2 volumes right now, and if we keep doing this, it's going to end up being, 3, 4, 5 volumes. But that's what's holding Matt back is, why give this away for free if we're going to try to sell it as a book?
My answer to that would be, you're talking about the 123 obsessive Cerebus Dave Sim fans, where you could do videos of them, just like a puppet show with them moving across the screen and go, here's Please Hold for Dave Sim, the animated film, and they buy that just because that's how they are. They gotta have everything. My sense of this is, I think maybe the better use of time, since they are transcribed, it's like, and presumably it's reasonably accurate transcription.
The early ones are a little wonky, where it was hard to hear, or he wasn't sure of a spelling, or it was hard to hear, so he guessed. But I think the later ones, the audio got better, and I think they're probably more verbatim. Okay.
But my larger point is, why not make them word searchable so that, again, if you're talking about the Cerebus archive, and it's Kevin Eastman's always the example that I use. Someone is interested in everything that Dave Sim has had to say about Kevin Eastman. And in that case, it would be a matter of, as long as it's word searchable, if Jesse's doing all of these transcripts, then you just have to go, okay, I've got this database of the transcriptions of all the Please Hold for Dave Sim. I'm going to type in the search term Kevin Eastman, and let's see what comes up, and just see what lights up. And I think you would be doing an enormous favor for future researchers who are interested in that kind of connection. Like someone who's writing a book about Kevin, or somebody who's writing a book about turtles, the whole history of it. They're going to be interested in talking about Turtles number 8, because Kevin makes no secret of the fact that it's one of his favorite Turtles issues, if not his absolute favorite Turtles issue. But they're not going to want to go and interview everybody connected with it. It would be convenient for them to just go, okay, here's Please Hold for Dave Sim, 175, 200 hours of transcription, type in Kevin Eastman. Please spit out all of the references to Kevin Eastman. Here they come. Okay, I've now done all of my research for Turtle number 8.
Well, that's something I think if I publish the book digitally, it'll be searchable. I believe. Right. That's something I got. It's one of those where it's like, this is going to be a more than just okay. I can get this done in a weekend.
Well, yes, it's like, and then Jesse, like, Cerebus TV, transcribing all of Cerebus TV and all of the weekly updates. It's I am completely undeserving of any kind of fandom attention like that. So it's so really good that I do have a Jesse Lee Herndon, and that I do have a Margaret Liss, that I do have a Matt Dow, because the world wouldn't be big enough for more than one of each of those. And this is, if Cerebus does get preserved into the future, it'll be your doing. So the other thing that Jesse came up with, I don't know if people remember that one of Jesse's first contacts was when I was doing sketches back in the drawing days and the Cerebus TV days, and he wanted Cerebus as a Mighty Morphin Power Ranger. Jesse is a huge Mighty Morphin Power Rangers fan, so I did a whole C-minus kid doing air guitar and rocking out to the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers theme song, having been chastised for not taking Jesse Lee Herndon, the devoted Cerebus fan, seriously enough. And now, in answer to my request for concepts for future Cerebus in Hell issues, Jesse has also sent along the mightily misanthropic power aardvarks, and has even incorporated the sketch that I did, which is basically just a Mighty Morphin Power Rangers mask, helmet, which looks like Cerebus. And I looked at it and went, "That's really good." And it's like, yeah, that's a big chunk of the mightily misanthropic power aardvarks right there. So moving to the next stage on that one, Jesse, you're the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers fan. Give me a distilled somewhere between an elevator pitch and a Reader's Digest article on the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. And go ahead.
The one thing about the Power Rangers that this is one of those things where anyone else would just be like, yeah, okay, it was something with the Power Rangers, nobody's going to care. But this is a Dave Sim flashing light. Is in the original Japanese version of the show, it was, I forget the name of the genre, but it's basically a 5-man team every time. Whatever the show, Voltron, whatever. It's 5 people. One of them's a girl, the rest are guys. So, right. 1 woman, 4 men. When they brought the show to America, because in America that doesn't fly anymore, like by the 90s, we were progressive enough that, no, you can't just have the token girl, you have to have more than one. They changed the Yellow Ranger from a man to a woman. But the way they film the show is, these are American kids acting, doing stuff, and then they morph, and it's footage from Japan. So the female Yellow Power Ranger becomes obviously a male. So that's one of those.
We're not allowed to say that anymore either.
Well, we got more progressive.
Right.
But But it's funny because the Pink Ranger, who's the girl, has a little skirt so that you can't see her crotch because it's Japanese TV. But the male Yellow Ranger you can see his bulge. Well, in the American version, it's still a yellow. There's no skirt. And every time, because I used to watch the show, and every time I'm like, why did they think no kid would notice this?
Right. Right. I mean, it's writing itself. It's like my first thing I think of is trans rangers. That's what happens when you morph from an American female character into a male Japanese character. Is that racist? Is that anti-trans? Jesse even writes. It'd be a great way to parody the traditionally PC aspects of the source series. Quote, we've got one character from every race, unquote. Quote, yeah, but you made the black guy the Black Ranger, the Asian girl the Yellow Ranger, unquote. Which is like, yeah, that's racist. You can't literally do black and yellow. It's black isn't black and yellow isn't yellow. It's got to be black and Asian. Although black now has a capital on it in progressive newspapers, I've noticed. It's like it used to be that black people were lowercase b black people, but now they're capital B black people. And I go, well, why aren't white people capital W white people? I know the answer to that. It's like, you racist, you Nazi. So, yeah, Jesse, if you can just give me a Reader's Digest on all of that kind of stuff, so that I know exactly what it is that I'm making fun of. I think this is going to be like shooting ducks in a barrel.
Well, the part I love about the Power Rangers is the Black Ranger was black, the Yellow Ranger was Asian, the Red Ranger had a very dark tan, and the Pink Ranger was a white girl, and then the Blue Ranger was the nerdy guy that you know could never get laid.
And that's it. We'll lead you right up to that particular fountain, but we'll let you drink from that yourself. Yes, Jesse, definitely. The other suggestion they had was a From Hell parody, which, he says possibly a tougher sell with the cover is the only memorable From Hell cover with the first issues with the top hat and the grapes. I switched those out for a more Cerebus-oriented bucket of scotch and raw potatoes. And I reading that, I thought it would be very interesting to have the War of Babylon take on From Hell, with people exploiting dead hordes and mutilated hordes, which I suspect is probably going to catch up with Alan and Eddie if it hasn't done already. This is not suitable material for entertainment, although it was a brilliant, cutting-edge graphic novel 30 years ago, and 15 years ago, and 10 years ago. We are definitely now in Alice in Wonderland territory, where the boys could end up getting canceled just for you did this 30 years ago, and you had no idea how bad this was, and we didn't know how bad this was, but now we know how bad it was, so you are officially canceled, and you are now toxic third rails that can never be touched, just like Dave Sim and Cerebus.
Have you seen the remastered version of From Hell yet?
No. Jesse was mentioning that they put like colors on it.
Not only did they, this is comic book metaphysics at work. So this week, Sean and Carson Grubaugh got invited by the American Library Association to a virtual talk with Eddie Campbell. about graphic novels.
Oh, really?
And not only did they colorize it, but Eddie went back and redrew panels and pages and fixed things that have bothered him about it. He's like, if we're gonna remaster it, let's remaster it right. So I was watching the video of it, and I believe he says at one point that one of the girls, they had autopsy photos and they were really bad photos, and since then somebody's turned up better copies of them or digitally enhanced copies, so he went back and redrew it so that that particular murder looks a lot better than it did at the time.
Better being a relative term.
Yeah.
When you're talking about autopsy photos of mutilated prostitutes.
Right.
It's again, I'm kind of glad that I at least don't have any mutilated prostitutes in my ooh that I'm particularly aware of.
Eddie did tell Sean next time he talks to you to say that Eddie says hi, and I'm like, I'm gonna be talking to Dave in less than a week, so Eddie says hi.
Hi, Eddie. How are you doing? It's bloody Eddie Campbell. That was how I always thought of him. And when he would phone, or I would phone him, and it's like it's bloody Eddie Campbell. And he'd say, well, it's bloody Dave Sim. So, but I hope it sells a bunch of copies. I mean, seriously, From Hell is a classic. We're all wandering around in this strange worldwide feminist star chamber that's just getting more and more feminist and more star chamber. Folks, this is what I warned you about 25 years ago. Like this doesn't get better. Read about Chairman Mao's Cultural Revolution. It was Chairman Mao's Cultural Revolution, but it was mostly Chairman Mao's wife's Cultural Revolution. And once it gets going, it's they devour all of the oppressors, and then the oppressed start turning on each other. And it only takes a few years, but the casualty rate was, in China, it was in the millions. I laugh about it because it's like, well, you might as well. If you really think that, we'll let them eat Dave Sim for breakfast, but they'll leave us alone. It's like, read a book about the Cultural Revolution. Read a history of the 1917 revolution in Russia. It doesn't go that way. You either everybody sticks together and we all have the same rights, or don't be surprised, they will be at your door tomorrow, and you'll just be going, how did we get here? Well, by not saying anything when it wasn't you that they were coming for. Okay. Jesse also wanted to know about, last time you also mentioned the Cerebus collector, which among other items of note would have had a different cover for Cerebus number 18. I'm curious about that because the only Cerebus cover in the whole series that I absolutely detest happens to be the cover to issue 18. It's just pictures from the issue cut and pasted together. And the IDW covers book doesn't mention an alternate one was considered. What's the story behind that? Please do not go and dig out the cover and have Rolly scan it or anything. I'm just curious about the story of there being two potential covers, as it's something I never knew. That was one of the pitfalls of doing the cover before I actually had the story fully written. Florok, I think, was the name of the city, and they kill everybody in the city. And Cerebus is wandering around in the city, and somebody has survived, and they're inside the walls, and turning up intermittently and causing a lot of trouble for Cerebus. So that Cerebus spends a lot of time trying to figure out who it is and how he can get them. And I had the cover, and it's the foreground is just Cerebus with a club or a sword or whatever, and in behind him you can see it's a worm's eye view, and you can see the ceiling, and somebody's sticking out of the ceiling. And as I wrote the story, I was writing all of the stuff about Cerebus running his plague scam, which was pretty funny, I thought. And so I started riffing on that more, but that was eating up a lot of pages. And I was going, well, when do I get to this person who's hiding in the walls and jumping out here and there? And it's like I went, I'm not going to get to that. I'm looking at, I've got this page done. I've written the Cerebus doing his people dying in the city of a plague riff, and the issue is almost done. There's only like 4 or 5 pages left over. And it's like, that was the point where I went, well, okay, now I have to admit to myself that I'm going to need a new cover, because if I do that cover, then people are going to go, well, that's a really good issue, but what is this thing with this guy, coming out of the ceiling or sticking up over the railing? There's no scene like this anywhere in the comic book. And that was what I went, I really don't have time to do a new cover, so I think this is just going to be our tribute to Jim Warren magazine's issue, where Jim Warren would do that from time to time. The cover would just have a selection of 3 or 4 panels from inside the issue. And he was also very fond of the tone yellow as a background, which I kind of like it as well, particularly if you drop a magenta on top of it. So you end up with this sort of warmish, orangish, reddish color on the word Florok. So that's the story on that one. The cover, there wasn't another finished cover. There's a sketch for the cover, and that was one of those things where I went, doing a thing called Cerebus Collector, nobody is going to see the sketch for the original Cerebus number 18 storyline. So that'll be a good thing that I could put in the Cerebus Collector. So there you go. Another part of Please Hold for Jesse Lee Herndon. Please Hold for Jesse. Lastly, he's not done yet. Lastly, I ended up with copies of a pair of Ashcan comics known as the Independent Comic Book Sampler, published in 1989 by Jeff Miller. It's like a 2-issue bio/single-page showcase for indie creators and comics. Some future big names in it, but overall, nothing too memorable. I got it for the Tick and Flaming Carrot bit. Cerebus is suspiciously absent. However, there's a bit in the back of issue 1 which does mention you. I scanned it for the Facebook group, but here's a transcription of it. The Wave of the Future, at a recent summer conference, and did they get that wrong? No, they got it right. It's Summit Conference, held by Dave Sim. Several creators expressed an interest in publishing mini-comics for 1989. Sim himself is quoted as saying, quote, "Mini-comics are the wave of the future," unquote. He revealed plans to release a bi-weekly Cerebus mini-comics series in December. Mirage Studios also announced the possibility of mini-comics featuring TMNT by Eastman and Laird, Commandosaurs by Laird and Bissett, Melting Pot by Eastman and Talbot, and Puma Blues by Murphy and Zully. These groundbreaking efforts might finally convince fans that minis are fun and collectible. Jesse writes, this sounds very similar to Cerebus Biweekly, but mini comics? Was this ever a real consideration for you that you can recall? Next, we'll be finding an interview from the 90s where you float the idea of Cerebus Pogs. Thanks and take care, Jesse. That was one of those things that came up at the summit where I think that was Scott McCloud's idea, because he was already doing Zot mini comics, and it was a good idea that if some of the bigger name indie people did mini comics, not Ashcan's, actual mini comics that were folded down 8.5 by 11 sheets down to really small size, 4.5 by 5.5. The reason that I called it the wave of the future was this is very possibly the entry point for aspiring cartoonists, and yes, we should try and provide a launching pad by saying, here, established creators do this, you as a non-established creator can do this, and maybe you just stay in mini comics, but at least it'll be a creditable environment. I never got around to doing it. I think the only people who did it were the people that were already doing it, which was Scott McCloud with his Zot mini comics. I don't think there was a Melting Pot mini comic or Puma Blues. Pretty sure there wasn't a TMNT. So it would have been a good idea. It's probably something I should have paid more attention to and actually done. But you do have the problem there of, okay, how do you get these to the people who want them? We couldn't unilaterally do mini comics and turn around and say to Diamond and Capital City and all of the other distributors, you now sell mini comics because we need you to get these to the stores so that they start building a mini comic environment. The comic book field really doesn't work that way. You can't force things down the throat of the distributors or down the throat of the retailers, which is part of what we would be doing. The same as if I decided to do Cerebus postage stamps, which would be the same as mini comics, but each one would have a different panel on it, and it would be a block of 8 is this comic book story. Great, very, very innovative idea. You can do vanity stamps in Canada, but you can't just turn around and tell Diamond, okay, you need a new section in your catalog for vanity postage stamps. And stores, you're going to have to figure out something in your display space where you can display the Cerebus vanity stamp format. So that was really where that foundered, was no place for it, and more that needed to be done elsewhere in order to keep everything chugging along than trying to figure out how to get mini comics in a dominant situation